Last year was a very good year for movies, and I am not one of those people who says that sentence every single year. But 2023 had some bangers, and so many of them were so good that it was pretty tough for me to assemble a top 10 list up until this point. But after much consideration and re-ranking, I can confidently say that the following 10 movies are my absolute favorite of last year, with a number one pick that I have yet to see on anybody else's top 10 list. So instead of giving you another 2 whole minutes of introduction, let's just get started. I will admit this one definitely fought the hardest to get here because there were like 6 other movies that were fighting for this spot. Those other movies will get their own shout outs at the end of the video, but this section is all about Talk to Me. And I'll admit, I'm pretty biased towards this pick. I was pretty unfamiliar with the Raka Raka Boys before going into this, but I quickly became a fan after realizing these guys are pretty much living my dream by transitioning from a popular YouTube channel into a full-length feature that got picked up by A24. And the best part of that entire story is that the movie is also really good. Elevated horror has been on the rise over the past couple years in masterpieces like Hereditary, Midsommar, and The Witch. But Talk to Me stands out in that classic horror movie department. It's not trying to be super deep or make you rethink aspects of your life, but it does say, hey, do you guys want to see teenagers get high off of demons? And with that concept, it gives you some pretty fucked up imagery and good scares. It connects all of this to a story that is emotional enough to get invested in and features some truly great teenage performances. It is a little bit by the books in terms of plot structure, but in a world where a million possession movies just feel like copies of The Exorcist, Talk to Me gave us something that felt completely fresh and was told in a fast-paced, intense way that only YouTubers could bring to the table. The Iron Claw is so tragic of a story that you would think this entire thing was fiction. I mean, if your movie is so sad that you had to cut out a 5th brother who killed himself in real life because the movie already felt a little too tragic, how could you not get a compelling movie out of that? The entire cast is phenomenal, and I've been praising Harris Dickinson ever since he was in Beach Rats, so I'm very happy to see his career taking off more and more as time goes on. Zac Efron delivers a really great performance here though, and I'm really curious to see what kind of acting comeback he can make over the next couple years if he chooses to, because if he gets a couple more roles like this, we could see some Oscar nominations in the near future for this guy. This is one of the few movies I've seen in the past couple years where the actors are so convincing of actually being related. These 4 especially feel like brothers, and maybe it's the beautiful cinematography adding that nice glow around all of them together in the first half, but I was pretty sold on every single relationship in the movie. I do think it feels a little bit too long by the end of the runtime, but the last scene completely shattered my soul. So yeah, I think it's worth a watch. Alexander Payne is one of those directors that I am very behind on. I've only seen Nebraska, which I liked, and The Descendants, which I thought was great at the time I saw it, and I think The Holdovers just proved I need to watch the rest of this guy's stuff because I had a great time with this. It's weird though, because a lot of people think this should be up for Best Picture and all that kind of stuff, but to me this is less of an impressive movie and more of a, yeah, I can get cozy and rewatch this every Christmas kind of movie. As someone who loves to throw on a Home Alone, an Elf, or a Grinch around the Christmas season, having a new, more adult version of that kind of movie is awesome to have in your pocket. The performances are strong, the dialogue is both funny and heartbreaking, and the entire aesthetic of making this feel like a film that was recovered from the 70s really gives The Holdovers a sort of classic feel to it. When somebody says, remember when movies used to be good? This feels like it was from that time, and it just happened to be released in 2023. Movies that give off this kind of hangout vibe are always going to be a personal favorite for me, and when we get a good one, I will always be somewhere in the corner cheering it on. It's just a hard movie to dislike, even though my dad hated it. I don't know what else I can add to the Barbie conversation at this point. Greta Gerwig is just one of the most exciting voices in Hollywood at the moment, so I should have never doubted her in the first place, but I'm still in such disbelief that Mattel allowed this movie to be made, with the amount of straight up bullying of their brand throughout, and adding some of the most insane toy ideas that this company has ever pumped out. It was a bold move from the jump, to say the least. A lot of people have claimed this movie is too woke, which I still think is so funny. Like, yes, it's a movie that praises women because it's the fucking Barbie movie.
Week 1, this thing is going to clean up at the domestic box office. My prediction is going to just absolutely fall off a cliff after that. The repeat business on this movie is going to be non-existent.
I thought the America Ferrera monologue was a little bit cringe, admittedly, but the rest of the film just feels so genuine in its approach to the subject, with both the bench scene and the ending being some of the most emotional moments of the year for me. It's by far one of the funniest movies of 2023, with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling both carrying this entire team on their back. Don't get me wrong, every other actor nails their role, especially Michael Cera, but these two were just so perfectly cast as Barbie and Ken that it makes it impossible to see any other pair in the role. But that being said, I'm still waiting for the Amy Schumer cut that we almost got. I will admit, I do think a couple of the jokes didn't hit me as hard on a rewatch. That is a pretty minor complaint for one of the best mainstream movies of the entire decade so far. This might be my hottest take on the list, until we get to one more pick later down the line. I think it's safe to say that Saltburn was the most polarizing movie of 2023. A lot of people straight up hate this movie, and others think it's a perfectly crafted masterpiece. And I'm just sitting here like, yeah, that's some of the most fun I've had at the movies in a long time. I don't think it's necessarily as smart as Emerald Fennell wants it to come across as. I mean, my boy Zach Shevich made a whole deep dive on TikTok about how there's no possible way this family could have received an Academy screener for Superbad, but I do think when this movie hits, it hits home runs. The style is there, the acting is on point, the dialogue had me locked in like I was watching a Tarantino flick, and even though not all of the themes are fully explored, I love how she talks about the upper middle class often downplaying their amazing home life, because one of those reveals in the middle of the movie is just so satisfying. That's not even to mention that this is one of the grossest movies we've had in a while, and that bathtub scene is probably going to turn most people off and a few people on, but I'm a fan of movies that just say, fuck it, we're going for it, which we don't always have the luxury of getting these days. And as fucked up as it is, I feel like the aesthetic makes me want to rewatch it as much as possible. It's a pretty fucked up coming of age-ish movie, and I heavily prefer it to Promising Young Woman. Dream Scenario was my biggest surprise of 2023, and I had almost missed it while it was in theaters. But luckily, my girlfriend's little legs ran with me to one of the last showings available, and we had such a great time. In a world where it feels like originality is harder and harder to find, this just gave me something completely fresh. It's dark, it's hilarious, it says a lot about how fame affects every single aspect of not only your life, but everybody else around you. If the Academy Awards were only up to me, I think I would give Nick Cage the win this year. This might be the best performance I have ever seen from him, to the point where if he wasn't in the movie, I'm sure I would still like it, but not nearly to the extent that I did. Although if they did cast Adam Sandler like director Christopher Borgli originally wanted, I'm sure that version would have also been awesome. Just like Talk to Me, this feels like the first of many modern voices that are breathing some life into cinema, which we need if we want it to survive for another 100 years. And I know comedy is the most subjective genre there is, but for me, this is probably the funniest movie of the year. Between dream influencers and certain nightmares with Nick Cage just acting goofy, I loved my entire time with this. And also, the fart joke is probably the best fart joke ever put to screen. Take The Social Network and The Office, throw them in a blender, and you are only scratching the surface as to why Blackberry is awesome. I've been a fan of Matt Johnson ever since I watched The Dirties, which to this day is still one of my all-time favorite low-budget indie movies. And he takes everything that worked comedically from that movie and just dropped it into this corporate biopic about one of those phones that my ex-Uncle Gino still probably uses. Even though we have plenty of incredible movies throughout history, I think it's rare to find a film that feels like every single department was perfectly in sync throughout the entire creative process. And maybe it wasn't at all, but the way the camera work and blocking perfectly supports both the script and the amazing performances from the three leads feels next level here. But out of all those performances, Glenn Howerton is just a scary kind of good here. I know this film was a little too small for the Oscars this year, but he should win the Academy Award for all 4 acting categories as far as I'm concerned, because this might be the performance of the decade so far. Throughout 2023, whenever anybody would ask me, hey, is there any good movies I should check out? It didn't matter if it was a friend, my aunt, or an old person at the coffee shop, because Blackberry is the easiest one to recommend. It's one of those rare movies that feel like it could be loved by pretty much anybody, and who knows, maybe after a rewatch, I might end up liking it a little bit more than The Social Network. Celine Song's Past Lives is not only one of the best directional debuts of the past few years, but also just one of the absolute best of the decade so far. Clearly, this is a very personal story, but that is exactly what makes it so relatable. There's nothing epic or fast-paced about it, but rather an inside look at the unraveling of a relationship, along with how we handle those what-ifs in our lives. Anybody that has ever been in love has probably wondered about every other timeline their life could have taken, and this is a movie that both celebrates that timeline you are currently in, while also those past lives that could have been. There is nothing flashy about anything in the filmmaking or acting here, which gives it that authentic feeling that so many other movies try to replicate, and very few films feel as real as this one. Not only is it beautifully shot in terms of the dual locations of South Korea and America, but there are so many great single takes that just keep us locked in on these characters. The performances from both leads are excellent, and I really think Greta Lee should be in the conversation of Best Actress for those final moments alone, because they are some of the best of the entire year, but it takes an entire hour and 30 minutes to get us to that point, and Celine's song doesn't waste a single second of it. It's a beautiful tribute to love and letting go, and unless you don't have a soul, it's not a question of will you like this, but rather how much will you love it. I talked a lot about Oppenheimer in my Christopher Nolan ranked video, which you could go check out if you want more of my in-depth thoughts on this and how it stacks up against the rest of this guy's incredible filmography. But yeah, I think Oppenheimer is pretty incredible. I really liked it the first time I saw it, but I think the rewatch the next day completely solidified my opinion on this work. Sure, it's 3 hours, but kind of like The Wolf of Wall Street or Lord of the Rings, it doesn't really feel like 3 hours. The editing from Jennifer Lame is not only the best of the year, but some of the best of the past 5 years. Because keeping an audience this hooked by cutting in between different scenes of scientists just talking in one long sequence and keeping it as exciting as it is, well, that is not an easy feat to pull off, and yet this woman completely pulls it off like it's nothing. I think the performances kind of speak for themselves because you have Academy Award winning actors in roles that take up no more than 3 minutes of screen time, and everybody that has a much larger role in this just absolutely kills it. The weight of this man's accomplishments is felt in every single second of that third act, and I think the ending of this film should be a required viewing for anybody in the world that is in any position of power. I'm not surprised that Christopher Nolan made one of my favorite movies of the year, considering he is my favorite filmmaker working today, but what I didn't expect is everybody else to feel the same exact way. And I think if this isn't the year where he finally gets Best Director and Best Picture at the Academy Awards, he might get a pity Oscar for Tenet too. But before we hop into number one, it's been very busy in my life, not only this year, but the past 4 or 5 at this point. And this has been a channel I have been waiting to bring back and go all in on for some time. However, my time is limited, and I've needed help with the channel to get it to the heights that I want to take it. So I've been fortunate enough to work with my boy Ryan on quite a few of these videos, and although there's not enough things I can do to say thank you for all of the help, I thought the least I could do was have him share a couple of his favorite movies from 2023. So Ryan, I'm gonna throw the mic from the East Coast all the way across the country to you, so take it away.
All right, thank you for the floor, Chase, and hello everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm the editor on some of Chase's videos, and I want to say thank you, Chase, for having me on here. It goes to say I'm incredibly thankful for including me in this section of the video. Now, I must warn prior that I'm nowhere even close to watching the number of movies Chase has. My life is fairly busy, consisting of being a father, husband, and this wonderful job called editing, and it keeps my schedule pretty packed, so I don't have the most time offered to watch some of the smaller movies, or even during the holidays I went to the theater like twice. Also, to point out, these are my personal favorites of 2023, not the best movies of 2023. I know there's a number of folks out there who get upset when the best of lists don't clarify that these are personal favorites and not the best, and chances are I won't go into insane detail with them. I'm just talking about them briefly, but I did catch some good ones this year, and starting off with number 5, Godzilla -1. I wouldn't really call myself a kaiju film buff. I've seen mainly the American ones here and there, but I'm never a devout follower of the genre. But after hearing the hype, I had to check this out myself, and let me tell you, this film did not disappoint in the slightest. You know, instead of cheering for Godzilla causing the destruction, you instead become white-knuckled that their existence is to make our lead characters' lives a literal hell. Director Takashi Yamazaki surprisingly made a monster film similar to that of Jaws, meaning it's never about the monster itself, but rather the characters and the drama. There was emotion I never expected, which is always a great thing, and hearing the rumors about the budget of the film gives me hope about what Japanese cinema can bring in the future. Also, Yamazaki wants to make a Star Wars film, so I mean, come on, Lucasfilm, you gotta give this man a job. At number 4, we have John Wick Chapter 4, because it's the 4th film and it deserves to be number 4. Alright, look, I adore the John Wick franchise, and this is by far the best one. And even though Chase doesn't think so, he gave this movie a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and it might as well just be a half star, am I right? I think the main John Wick series will go down as some of the best American action films of all time. This really felt like Keanu Reeves and the stunt team wanted to lay everything on the table and not hold a single thing back, because let's not kid ourselves, Keanu's getting old and he knows that. He gave us a satisfying conclusion to the series, and even though there will be more spin-offs in the future, I'm just happy I have my 4 movies and I can die happy with them. And might I add that this is one of the most beautifully shot action films. I was honestly shocked that this didn't make the shortlist for the best cinematography at the Oscars. It's a damn shame. Next up, number 3, we got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I personally think next to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, Into the Spider-Verse is a contender for the best Spider-Man movie or even the best superhero film of all time. You can really make arguments for both, but we now have a new contender for one of the best superhero movies ever, again with this next installment. It takes the animation and turns it up to 11, and the second that this film starts, it never lets go. But maybe till a cliffhanger, which, you know, a lot of people weren't fans of, but I haven't had a cliffhanger like that since Infinity War. I'm just happy I was alive to witness that. It just sucks to hear the working conditions of the crew during production, but they should all honestly be proud of what they made. And whenever it comes out, Spider-Verse 3 could be in contender for the best superhero trilogy of all time. Alright, number 2, we have Past Lives. Celine Song's directorial debut gave me something I always hoped to see in a film. A complex human story that can create many discussions about the thought process and actions of these characters. I love Greta Lee's lead performance, as she was the perfect example of how to pull off that particular trait off. Loads of people will go in criticizing the way Greta Lee handles certain people and situations of her life, and I think it wouldn't have been brought home if it wasn't for John Magaro's character. It represents a certain maturity on how a person should handle these sort of situations that are thrown at them, because others' actions could affect them. And not to mention, T.O.U's performance was phenomenal also, since he had this very transparent level of pain shown on his face throughout the whole movie. I just wanted to give this guy a huge hug. Those 3 characters brings that concept to how you can balance 2 worlds, and if one is worth keeping despite if it's your true origin. It's a fantastic discussion film, and I can't wait to see it again. Alright, and finally, my personal favorite movie of the year is Oppenheimer. Christopher Nolan returns in what I think is his best film he's made. The IMAX experience was like none other, and it really was just this huge celebration of cinema, with Barbie coming out the same week and both movies crushing it. This film made me realize people have a hunger to see a 3-hour epic drama in theaters instead of seeing only superhero/action films. Even though a superhero and action film made this list, it made me realize that there's teams out there who are gonna step up their game now. Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, they all killed it. There was not a single bad performance. I took my dad to go see it, and he was telling me how he studied the Manhattan Project in his college years, and he gave me a brief history lesson on the stuff that wasn't in the film. And after hearing that, it made me love the film even more. Also my favorite ending of the year, because when it hits, it gets you really pissed off at all the events that happens prior to Oppenheimer. I'm rooting for this movie to win Best Picture. I think the entire team crushed it, and Christopher Nolan should probably win Best Director, and they should all be proud. Alright, that's my personal top 5 movies of 2023 list. I may have dragged this on a little bit, but how can I not? Because I really love these 5 movies. I thought 2023 had some great movies, and I'm really looking forward to 2024 because we have some bangers incoming. I'll see you guys through the editing, and thank you, Chase, once again for having me on the team. Much appreciated, my friend. Have a happy new year, everybody, and be safe. Back to you, Chase.
Thanks again to Ryan for all the help in sharing those 5 movies, and I like John Wick Chapter 4, alright? It just wasn't my favorite of the year, or the John Wick franchise for that matter. But with all of that being said, this is my favorite movie of 2023. I'm not sure if I've ever had my number 1 movie of the year be something as polarizing as Beau is Afraid, and I'll admit I was tempted to put Oppenheimer over it just because I've only seen this once and that one 3 times, and these two were running neck and neck for my number 1 spot the entire year. But I was nervous going into this one because I caught it a week or 2 after it released, and I heard so many negative things about it. I still went in pretty excited because even though I usually need to see at least 4 or 5 movies from a director to call them one of my favorite filmmakers, Ari Aster made two of the best movies I have ever seen in Hereditary and Midsommar. So anything this guy decides to make, I will be purchasing a ticket as soon as I can. And although Beau is Afraid is not on the level of those other two movies, at least at the moment, this is the one movie I have not been able to stop thinking about the entire year. The reason I wanted to start talking about movies online in the first place was because I loved watching other people talk about movies that didn't give you every single answer on the surface. One of my favorite YouTube videos to this day is Chris Stuckman's breakdown of Enemy, because that was a movie I thought I liked once the credits started rolling, but I knew there were so many things I probably missed in the story. And I think it's okay to dislike whatever movie you choose to dislike, but I also think if you didn't fully understand a movie, it is okay to look up how other people interpreted it. I saw this with my girlfriend, sister, and friend, and as soon as the credits started rolling, we all couldn't stop talking about it the entire hour after it ended. We all picked up on so many different details in the background that connected to that overall story. And I think that is something Ari Aster has proven to be a master at so far in his career. Were there things we had to look up to get some clarification on? Of course! I had no idea about all of the literary references in the middle section, and at one point I said, that ending reminds me of that book I had to read in high school called The Trial, only to realize it was written by Kafka, who is referenced in like every interview for this movie. So yeah, I felt a little bit behind. But I think when you catch up on information like that, it helps you improve in your knowledge and taste, because those things are always evolving no matter what. I'm sure there are things I will even miss on the next 2 or 3 rewatches of this, but that is exactly what I love about watching movies. My favorite film of 2022 was by far Top Gun Maverick, something that is the complete opposite of this, because I love a movie that makes me think just as much as the blockbuster that goes all out on giving the fans exactly what they want. Joaquin Phoenix completely nails the role. The humor and the chaos of the first act is unlike anything else I have ever seen. The follow-up of being stuck with the suburban family is just as good in a completely different comedic way, and the absurdity and tension of the third act is hard to ever take out of your mind. It's not the movie I would recommend at the Thanksgiving dinner table. For that, I would go for Oppenheimer, Past Lives, and Blackberry. But for those that just want to get lost in something completely new and weird, but will reward anybody who is paying attention to every single detail, I think Beau is Afraid trumps anything else from 2023. And I guess that concludes my top 10 list. In terms of honorable mentions, I'll talk about a few of those movies that were fighting for my number 10 spot. Godzilla Minus One is pretty awesome, and is officially the first Godzilla movie I've seen where I can say that was pretty good. Air was a dad movie that got a little too much hate from people online, but I thought it was a great time. Killers of the Flower Moon was one of the biggest releases of the year, and even though I really liked it, I'm curious to see if I like it more on a rewatch. Anatomy of a Fall doesn't give you all the answers you'd usually get out of a mystery like this, and I absolutely loved that aspect of the film. Missing, the sequel or spin-off to Searching, flew way under the radar this year, but I thought it was another excellent mystery in that franchise. Megan is some of the most fun I've had in a horror movie in a long time, and I want to see like 3 sequels to this. No Hard Feelings brought back so many memories of watching those raunchy early 2000s comedies at a friend's house for a sleepover, and being in a packed theater of people laughing throughout this was one of my favorite theater experiences of the year. And then we have How to Blow Up a Pipeline, an edge-of-your-seat thriller that consistently had me holding my breath and proved that no matter where we come from or what our background is, we could all come together and become eco-terrorists. In terms of movies I wanted to see but have not gotten around to yet, When You Finish Saving the World, Inside, Dungeons and Dragons, Skinamarink. I want to see it, but one of my boys called it Skinama Waste of My Fucking Time, and I can't get that out of my head, and it doesn't seem like it would be for me, but I'll give it a chance eventually. Ferrari, Suzumi, is that how you say that? I don't know. Rustin, The Adults. I never had him as a professor, but the director Dustin taught at my film school while I was there, and he's a pretty cool guy, so shout out The Adults, and I hear it's pretty good. The documentary Kelsey, Go Birds, and then the 3 I really wanted to see but are just not available to me at all yet are American Fiction, Monster, and The Zone of Interest, because I think some of these could definitely make my list in the future. But besides that, I just want to say thank you for an awesome year. I know we've only put out a couple videos for you guys, but the response to all of the work Ryan and I have been putting in this entire year has been awesome to see. And we just have so many things planned for 2024, and I can't wait for you to see them. 8,500 of you click the subscribe button, and even if only a few of you have reached up to this point of the video, I just want to say thank you again. I want you to know how much we appreciate you. So let us know what your top 10 of 2023 was, because my favorite part of making these videos is seeing other people's lists to compare to. Shout out Ryan for editing this video and taking the time to add in his own top 5, so be sure to hit him up for any editing editing needs that you have. And I guess that's it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks.